Murray going for the record to the end zone. Touchdown, DeMarco Murray.
Yes, there were a lot of highlights for the Oklahoma Sooners on homecoming night as Oklahoma takes care of Iowa State in a big way. Final score 52-0, and the game was not even that close. Oklahoma now halfway through the season, perfect 6-0. They will move up in the AP and the coaches' rankings come Sunday. That's because, of course, Ohio State and Nebraska both go down on a separation Saturday. Talk a little bit more about the Big 12 in general in just a little bit. And, of course, the initial BCS rankings, which are due to be released on Sunday night. That should be great news for Oklahoma as well. We began the show with that DeMarco Murray clip because it's just testament of what hard work, dedication, never giving up can do. Of course, Murray had a fantastic freshman year back in 2007 for Oklahoma. Then at the end of the year against Texas Tech, suffering that devastating injury on that onside kick in Lubbock against Texas Tech. And even though Murray has played and contributed in recent seasons, obviously he hasn't been the same player since that devastating injury. Does DeMarco Murray look the same as he did back in 2007? I still don't think so, but that has never stopped him from continuing to battle, to compete, and amass touchdowns throughout his career. And obviously, he now stands alone. No Oklahoma Sooner football player has scored more touchdowns than number 7, DeMarco Murray, with his 56th, 57th, and the record-breaking 58th TD on Saturday night, which breaks Steve Owens' all-time record. And just put that in perspective for a second, because think about this. No team in college football history has scored more points than the Oklahoma Sooners. It's true. And you think about the great players that they've had that have scored a lot of touchdowns. Steve Owens, Billy Bessels, Billy Sims. I just mentioned 3 Heisman Trophy winners right off the bat right there. Murray has more touchdowns than them. And then in the contemporary era, like Q, Quentin Griffin, as well as Adrian Peterson. Yeah, you've heard of those guys, haven't you? And, of course, Mark Clayton, the terrific receiver in the early 2000s. He had a lot of touchdowns as well in his 4-year career with Oklahoma. Well, those guys have to take a back seat to DeMarco Murray, who had a 100-yard rushing night, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 1 receiving, and a big night for DeMarco Murray. Big reason why, of course, he had a big night was because, in my opinion, the real MVPs of this game were that offensive line that just played outstanding. Oklahoma ran the ball successfully against Iowa State and, of course, gave Landry Jones all kinds of times to throw. So you look at Ben Haber, the center. You look at the tackles, Donald Stevenson as well as Eric Menzik. You also look at a guy who's been seeing some playing time lately at Gabe Eichert, one guard, and then the other guard, Tyler Evans, and then the tight ends, James Hanna and Trent Rattery. The offensive line dominated this ball game. And of course, I know what people are going to be saying, the skeptics, the people who don't like Oklahoma, the people who might root for Iowa State. Some would say this for Iowa State. Well, Iowa State's a team that's lost 4 games already this year. Not very good. Oklahoma was supposed to win this game. And yeah, Iowa State did beat Texas Tech, but Texas Tech's already lost 3 games this year, and 2 of those losses were in Lubbock. Yeah. The big thing for Oklahoma on this night, of course, was to win, and to win impressively. But more than anything was to show improvement in so many facets of the game. Get off to a good start, which Oklahoma's done this year, but to be able to run and pass consistently, to be able to tackle better, something that they did not do against Air Force, something that they didn't do against Utah State, something that they definitely did not do against Cincinnati. Against Iowa State on Saturday night, Oklahoma fundamentally was very sound. Not too many penalties. 1 meaningless turnover, a fumble. They didn't throw any interceptions. It was a very good night disciplinary-wise for Oklahoma. Execution-wise, Oklahoma was on their game. So you have to give credit to the Sooners, to Bob Stoops and that coaching staff. The 2-week layoff definitely paid off, gave chance for Oklahoma to heal up a little bit after the Texas game, and allowed them to get their mind focused on Iowa State. If you had to play Iowa State the week after Texas, you still might have the Texas victory fresh on your mind, but instead that did not appear to be the case at all. And Yeah, Iowa State, this is a team that right now is 3-4. It's going to be very difficult for them to get to a bowl game because they still have to play Missouri and Nebraska and Texas, which is coming up next week. So you have to win one of those 3 games, and then you have to hold serve against Colorado and Missouri just to get to 6-6. That doesn't look likely for Iowa State, and that's too bad because that is a program that, despite the last 2 weeks where they lose big against Oklahoma on Saturday and they lost big to Utah the week before, it does appear that's a program, if you take those 2 games away, that they are showing signs of getting better, but they're just not there yet to compete with the big boys, as we found out on homecoming night for Oklahoma. But as we mentioned, DeMarco Murray, the big game offensively, but he wasn't the only one. Thanks to the offensive line's performance, Landry Jones had all kinds of time to throw. He could have thrown while sitting in the lawn chair if he wanted to from the pocket. It was that impressive what the offensive line did. Can't give enough credit to those guys. Jones, by the way, I believe completed his first 13 passes, 30 of 34 throwing. That's nearly 90%. And the job that Ryan Broyles did catching the ball, had 13 catches in the first half. And by the way, the Sooners' terrific receiver Broyles ended up with 15 catches for the ball game. Defensively, Oklahoma, very sound from the beginning. No doubt about it that Iowa State was going to have a very difficult time gaining yardage. In fact, Iowa State in that first quarter had barely over 40 yards of total offense and ended up with under 200 yards of total offense for the game. The multi-dimensional quarterback for the Cyclones, Austin Arnaud, had no chance tonight. He did complete most of his passes. However, he ended up with barely over 100 yards throwing. And rushing-wise, he was no factor at all. In fact, Iowa State's ground game was held in check all night long. Oklahoma led 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, but it was a second quarter in which they really put their foot down on the gas pedal with 3 touchdowns in that second quarter to take a 31-0 lead. And it was also a great game tonight for Oklahoma because of the backups getting some quality playing time. Before we talk about the backups, though, got to give it up to the entire defense for OU for pulling the shutout off. And it's kind of hard to recognize just a few players when your team performs a shutout because it's a team effort. A few players that deserve a lot of mention. Stacey McGee from his defensive tackle slot made a big impact early in the ball game, as well as Frank Alexander, who's kind of been in the doghouse lately. I know he's had injury issues, but he's had a tough time getting back on the field once he did get healthy. He started tonight and did well. But Travis Lewis, to me, was the defensive MVP with at least a dozen tackles on the night. He was everywhere for Oklahoma. Travis, please stay one more year for Oklahoma. I know you probably won't. Can hardly blame you because the NFL is waiting for you. But he is a junior, and you're hoping maybe just one more year. Lewis, terrific season. And, of course, to me, the MVP defensively tonight for Oklahoma. So big win for the Sooners, 52-0 over Iowa State. We're going to go ahead and highlight quickly the 4 keys to the game that we brought up on the weekly matchup show previously. Number 1, run like the wind blows. No question, a solid A for Oklahoma. Not only the fact that DeMarco Murray had over 100 yards rushing, but a newcomer, a true freshman in Roy Finch, got some quality playing time, saw his first real action of the year, had about 90 yards rushing. He is the future for Oklahoma. In my opinion, he will be the starting running back in 2011 for the Sooners. That kid is fast. Well, that's what you call a fast cat. He delivered. Number 2, contained the Iowa State run game. We knew this had to be a key because Iowa State's bread and butter is the running game. An A+ for the Oklahoma defense. Iowa State could not establish the run tonight, and that was evident because they punted a multitude of times. Number 3, the turnover war. We're going to go I for incomplete because the turnover war in this game, it didn't matter. Neither team threw an interception. Oklahoma did have the 1 lost fumble. When you win the game 52-0, you know, nobody remembers the lost fumble. Well, nobody except me. But seriously, the turnover didn't have any bearing on the score or the final outcome, so we go I for incomplete. And 3 the hard way. This was third down conversions, my final key. We go with an A- for Oklahoma. They were 9 of 15 on third down conversions. They were efficient. And conversely, Iowa State struggles for another week in third down territory. 4 of 15 on third down conversions. It is an improvement, though, from the week before because against Utah, the previous week, They didn't have any third down conversions in that contest, but 4 for 15 is still miserable any way you slice it. And Oklahoma's defense was a big reason why Iowa State had to punt so many times, was because obviously on third down they were very inconsistent. So yes, Iowa State is a struggling ball club, but still you were looking for improvement for Oklahoma any way you can get it, and they got it in so many ways. On homecoming night, Oklahoma 52, Iowa State nothing. Some quick thoughts on the Big 12 as we wrap up the show. 3 teams from the Big 12 that have done much better than I thought they were going to do back in August, and that is, first of all, Missouri, who laid an absolute beatdown in College Station against Texas A&M. Blaine Gabbert was not 100% today. It didn't matter. He had over 300 yards passing before the end of the third quarter, and you talk about a way that you could slowly but surely silence the A&M crowd. Missouri did that. They go into A&M and win impressively. They're still unbeaten, and they will await the Oklahoma Sooners next Saturday. It will be a primetime 7 o'clock game. I cannot think of another game nationally that's bigger than Oklahoma at Missouri. It's going to be a dandy. The Baylor Bears, believe it or not, they're getting closer and closer to bowl eligibility as they win again in the Big 12, winning at Colorado. So that's a good job by Art Broyles' squad. Baylor showing signs of life. And then Oklahoma State. Remember, I had a video not too long ago saying, should you take Oklahoma State seriously? Texas Tech is probably doing this right now. Yeah, you better. And I did pick Tech to win the game because I thought since the rivalry had home field advantage dominating, which it's been proven throughout the years, I thought Texas Tech could surely win at home since they've done that against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had not won in Lubbock since the 1940s. Well, that curse is over because Oklahoma State got the job done, winning 34-17. So the Pokes are still unbeaten. They host Nebraska next Saturday on ABC. So those are the 3 teams that have exceeded expectations. Now, the Texas-Nebraska game, and Nebraska is still a good ball club, okay? This is not going to be a beatdown on Nebraska. But, and also remember, too, that just because Nebraska lost today doesn't mean that they can't still have a successful season. But after observing that game today, 2 observations must be made right away. Number 1, Nebraska really needed a plan B if Taylor Martinez, which was plan A, could not run the ball successfully, and Nebraska did not have that. You have to give Texas's coaching staff credit. What Will Muschamp said, non-verbally, of course, to that Nebraska offense, we're going to take away your most prized possession, Taylor Martinez. He's not going to run free like he did against Kansas State, like he did against Washington, and like he did against a bunch of other opponents this year. If you can find another way to move the ball against our defense, then congratulations, you're probably going to go to Glendale, Arizona, and play for the national championship. Simply put, Nebraska's plan B, whatever that was, did not work. Of course, you can't blame it all on Martinez because Nebraska's receivers, when I watched the replay of that game on DVR, dropped at least a half dozen passes. So that was just a big-time offensive meltdown for Nebraska, but that would also be taking away credit from Texas' defense. I said they were still pretty good, and that was displayed in Lincoln on Saturday. So Texas with a big win. Mac Brown still has not lost in Lincoln, and unless these teams rematch in the Big 12 championship game or unless they meet in a bowl game anytime soon, you will not see Texas and Nebraska play each other for a very long time. Of course, Nebraska headed to the Big 10 Conference next season. Of course, we mentioned it earlier, was a separation Saturday. Ohio State upset by Wisconsin, and as we mentioned, Nebraska losing at home to Texas. Expect Oklahoma to be ranked no lower than 4th in both the major polls tomorrow and, of course, the big poll, which is the BCS, which comes out Sunday night. That will wrap it up for our postgame show. Oklahoma with a sound victory on homecoming night, 52-0 over Iowa State. Boomer Sooner.